Welcome everybody, McGull Wind Orchestra in conversation with, and we've got a really quite special one tonight, the first in conversation of 2021. And as the restrictions continue, we are still doing lots of virtual and online events. We've got several online performances to do, virtual performances, which means having a go at recording at home. Now, I know a lot of our members have been doing that already at home, but it might be a good chance to share with other members of the band their tips. Might also be a good chance to see how other people do it and see how other people feel about recording at home. And I might be able to give a bit of insight into actually sort of what goes on, what might be in other people's minds, and how it compares and contrasts to actually playing in the band in rehearsal and playing live, and when else you might want to make use of this technology in your practicing and in your own performance as well. So this evening it's very much for our members, and it's really nice to see so many of you joining us live. You're more than welcome. If you're watching this on YouTube, because of course it's being recorded, and you're watching it in the future, welcome to you as well. And we've got our star MWO technological wizard Chris, who, I'm going to say this publicly now, without Chris we wouldn't have managed, I think, a single virtual performance. And as if all his editing skills and putting all this sort of stuff together for us wasn't enough, Chris has very, very kindly put together an educational video on how to record yourself for a virtual performance, which will receive its world premiere this evening during this interview. So we'll say hello to Chris, and then we'll probably have a little look at the video first, and then we'll go and answer some questions and have a chat about it, and generally see what comes up of that. So good evening, Mr. Chris Horswood.
Good evening, Phil.
Nice to see you, and definitely thanks for all the videoing and everything that you're doing. I know it takes a huge amount of time and a lot of effort, and
Keeps me out of trouble.
Sorry?
Keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good to have a hobby, isn't it? And we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But do you want to talk about your ideas behind the instructional video that we're going to have a look at in a moment?
Well, it's just a very quick instructional video, only about 2 minutes long, just over, just to provide a quick guide on how to record a virtual performance. Unfortunately, I can't provide how to play your musical instrument. Of course, there's a multitude of instruments in the band, but this is just a quick look at how to set up your instrument, something to listen to the guide track, etc. And just hopefully a quick refresher for those who want to join in with the virtual performances but have been a bit unsure on how to do it.
Great. I've seen the first draft of this video, and I know it's very good and very interesting. So shall we go ahead and play that, Chris, and then we'll have a bit of a chat afterwards.
Hello, Jimmy. Are you wanting to record a virtual performance from the McGull Wind Orchestra but are unsure how? This video is a brief guide on how to record a virtual performance from the McGull Wind Orchestra when you're unsure how. Firstly, do you play a musical instrument, Jimmy? I said a musical instrument, Jimmy, but it's close enough. Along with your musical instrument and music provided to you, you will need a device to listen to the guide track, like a laptop or an MP3 player. And finally, a device to record yourself, be it a video camera or a smartphone. Find a quiet room you'll be comfortable recording yourself in and set up your camera and instrument. That's the ceiling, Jimmy. Those are your feet, Jimmy. That's a good angle to record yourself. You don't have to directly face the camera, you can be angled slightly if you prefer. Now you're ready to record. But are you forgetting something, Jimmy? Yes, your headphones to listen to the guide track. Remember, once you start recording, wait a few moments before you start playing. Golly gee willikers, Jimmy, that was fantastic. And remember, wait a few moments before you stop recording. Once you finish recording your video, you can transfer the file via an online transfer site like WeTransfer.com, or share it via a file storage site like Google Drive or Dropbox. Have fun recording your virtual performance.
So there we go. Now we know all about how to do it. I very much enjoy the old-fashioned side of that. Feels very Mr. Chumley Warner. It's a great video, and I think it sort of gives people a good idea of what's going on. That's going to be thanks for the rounds of applause that are appearing on the screen as well. Nice one. That's going to be available on YouTube, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll be able to watch that again if you'd like to watch it again, and we'll also send it round the whole band in an email as well, so you can look at that once more if you'd like, or twice more, as many times as you'd like, in fact. So first of all, let's talk about the technical side of recording, because I think that's where some people get a bit sort of concerned about what's going on and wonder, what they can do if the most sort of technologically advanced they are is maybe sending a few emails, and perhaps they've got a smartphone and things like that, maybe a little bit of social media. I think it can be quite a daunting task. So I wonder, Chris, could you talk us through your process of recording your parts, and then I'll see how that compares and contrasts to mine. And if anybody's got any other suggestions of how they do it as they're watching, pop it in the chat function, and we'll have a little conversation about that. But Chris, how do you go about it, and what gear are you using? Are you using anything particularly special, or is it just the sort of stuff that most people can get their hands on?
A bit of half and half. So I listened to the guide track via the YouTube link that we send out. That is done on my laptop. I've just got a set of headphones that I use to listen to that. For recording myself, the video and the audio, I use, you can see it in the background, my camera, which is not a professional camera. It's sort of top of the range home recording camera, so it isn't a top of the range camera. And I hook up a little microphone to it, and that only goes in via a quarter jack lead. So that gets a better audio than the little microphone inbuilt on the camera. But I understand that not everybody will have a professional setup. I know that Adam and Sarah, they've got a proper condenser microphone linked through an audio interface to their PC, and they record directly to software on their PC. But I don't expect everybody to have top of the range equipment. So if you're thinking you need an IMAX quality video with Dolby Atmos surround sound, the whole point of this is do what you can with what you've got. And it's supposed to have that homemade feel to it, because we are all locked up at home, so to speak. So I just set myself up in the room that I'm in at the moment, usually with the camera pointing towards that wall, because if you're going to record yourself, it's best to have the light source behind the camera or to the side, because if you have, let's say, the window directly behind you, then it will sort of provide overexposure. So you'll just get a big glare from the window, and you'll become a silhouette.
that's an interesting point. I'd not thought about keeping the light source behind the camera. Actually, I've not thought about that as I was recording videos. I've done it in various different rooms and in various different ways that I'll talk about in a moment. But I'd not thought about the sort of light and the angle of that. That's because you're a videographer as well, you see.
Yeah. Even if it's just because ideally the best is natural light. So I have my windows open. If it's later on at night, I have the light on, but I don't want to play too late at night, so I don't disturb the neighbours. Yeah, the light source behind the camera. Set up the camera and then the music stand in front of the camera. You can be a bit further away from the camera if you want. You can have it. You don't want to be too close, especially if you're using the inbuilt microphone on your smartphone, because sometimes it might distort the audio. So don't think your camera is right there on the edge of the phone, so you need to play directly at it, centimeters away, because that can cause distortion.
I think there's a couple of things I'd like to mention there, actually, Chris. One, when we look at the video, and we look at the video and everybody's in their little squares all along. It's quite nice if the music stand can be out of shot, and it doesn't take a lot of sort of positioning to get the music stand out of shot, does it? It only sort of needs to be at arm's length, really. But particularly if you're just balancing your mobile phone on the music stand, because if that's all very close and then you're playing right in and you get a very sort of close up angle of the musician performing as well, but also the sound is so close to that little microphone on your phone. It will, like you say, it'll distort, and I always tend to think of it as trying to get if you're just using a mobile phone or an iPad or something like that, something with a very small microphone, you really want to try and capture an ambient sound in the room, don't you? Think about it like your human ear. Nobody would want to put their ear so close to my saxophone, well, not even in the same room sometimes the way I play. But that, you just don't want to be right on top of it, either visually or from a point of view of sound. And it really doesn't matter, does it, if you set up your camera and you press record on your phone and then you walk away from it, because you could edit all that out, can't you?
And in fact, sometimes you notice at the beginning of the videos, I sort of have a sort of the amalgamation of people setting themselves up. So there will be times when you'll see people press record and then walk over to their stand, which I'll use just to add a bit of variety to the beginning and a bit of an introduction to the music rather than just starting straight away.
Yeah, I think that's quite a nice part of our videos, actually, because it does show, it's the end product is very professional, but it shows that it's everybody doing their own little thing, I think, which is a really, really nice thing. So do continue. We'll come to the chat in a minute and I'll have a little quick read through that, see if we can pick up on any of those points. So once you've set up your camera and either your microphone, or if you're just using the microphone in your camera or your phone or whatever, what's the next stage for you?
Ensuring my laptop, so the source of where you're going to get the guide track from is close by, so it's easy for you to lean over to pause it if you want to restart or split the recording into a couple of different videos. And then of course it's not too far away that when you stand up with or sit down with your headphones on, it drags it off the table. So once you're happy you set up, Phil will talk about best rehearsal practice in a bit, but once you're set up and you're happy, press record on your video camera, wait a few moments. Now this is mainly so there is a bit of a lead in, because sometimes, less so with modern technology, but it can could take a few seconds just to wake everything up. And yeah, because I know that sometimes the audio doesn't kick in straight away. I've noticed on some recordings. So it gives it a chance to start recording, gives me a chance to have a bit of a lead in, so I can then, same with the ending, a bit of a lead out to allow the flexibility within the edit.
It's got to be easier for you to edit together if there's that bit of space at the beginning and bit of space at the end, isn't
Yeah.
there? I think people are very concerned about pressing record and playing straight away, and as soon as you finish, turn it off quick. You know, done. Oh my goodness, I've got it over with. You don't need to think like that, do you? You can send you plenty of, you know, dead air time, if you like, whilst you're sorting yourself out, can't you? There's no rush to get going.
There's no rush to get going because it isn't a live performance, so I sort of control when the music starts in the final edit. So if you have 30 seconds before you actually start playing, then that's okay, because I'll just cut that off at the beginning. And then once you've set it recording, settle yourself down. You can either stand up or sit down. It's entirely up to you, however you feel comfortable recording yourself. And then you press play on the guide track and start playing, follow the music, and then play it straight through. You can stop halfway through if you're if you're a bit unsure on certain sections, like we did with Christmas Festival. A few people split it into two. A few did it into 3, 4 videos, just stopping at a multi-rest just to gather themselves, because Christmas Festival can be a tricky blow and there's tricky sections in it. So more than happy if you feel the need to stop halfway through. Again, don't just go, all right, I'm stopping at bar 53 and I'm at bar 53 now, stop. Stop at bar 53, give it a couple of seconds, then stop your recording, and then you can start a new recording in the same process. Start your recorder, wait a few moments, start your the guide track.
Yeah, great. And then when it's all done, and we'll discuss sort of various ways of doing it again in a moment. I'm just having a look through the chat, some good stuff going in there. When you've got it all done and you've boxed it off, what's the preferable way for you to receive it? Receive the file, and how are people sending it to you? Personally, I tend to always use WeTransfer, because that seems to be the easiest and, you know, nice bit of free software that's just available online and works very easily. I know there's other things you mentioned in the video there. Does it really matter how you get the file or what type of file it is?
No. In terms of the actual file itself, there's multiple different file formats. I might mention what your file is here. There's MP4, which is mainly used by Windows and Androids when they're for their camera apps. .mov is mainly used by Apple when they do videos. There's also WNV, AVI. There's a multitude of many different file formats, and I can handle most of them. If I can't, I can always use an online video file converter, because sometimes my software is 4 or 5 years old. As technology evolves, the codec behind the scenes of the file format of how the data is recorded and encoded does develop. So if you've got the latest Samsung Galaxy phone or the latest iPhone, then it might record in a format that my software can't handle, but don't worry about that. I can convert it into something that I can use. And for transferring the file over, as Phil mentioned, there's WeTransfer, which is a free site that you can transfer. I think free is up to 2 gigabytes, which is plenty enough for a video for one of our virtual performances. There's also, if you've got a Gmail or Google Mail account, that usually comes with the Google Drive, where you can drop in a file, then you share the file with me. There's also Dropbox, which you can use. I know that Apple has a file sharing ability. I can't remember what the name is because I'm not an Apple person. So that's a possibility. Ideally, you don't really want to attach the file directly onto an email because that would just be too big and chances are you won't send it. And secondly, I don't want 30 emails in my inbox all with 500 megabyte files attached. It'll just clog up my system. So it's just using a file transfer system is an easier way to transfer large files like that.
Yeah, great. Well, I think that's helpful. I've just been looking through the chat and people have got various different ways of recording. And I think it might be helpful if I talk about some of the ways I've been recording recently, and I'll pay some lip service to the things in the chat there. I'm going to talk from an Apple point of view because I'm using Apple material. And Chris, you might want to jump in with the sort of Android and the PC side of things as well. I must admit, I'm one of the least technical able people, really, and that's why I like the Apple stuff because it's very, very user friendly. It all talks to each other, and I don't know how it works, but it does work. It could be magic. I'm not sure, and really, I don't care because it just seems to do what it does. It's very, very intuitive. Before the pandemic and the first lockdown, I was often being approached to do remote recording sessions. And I bought myself a studio quality microphone and an audio interface. And I thought that, coupled with my MacBook, which I'm talking to you on now, would surely be brilliant. And I'd be able to do all this home recording, and wouldn't it be fantastic? And of course, I just never got into it, and I never tried to start doing that. I much prefer really going into a recording studio and doing recording sessions that way. I enjoy that way of working. But there is a market out there for remote recording. And then of course, when it comes along that we all had to work from home, suddenly all my recording sessions, not that there was that many of them, but the recording sessions that I had in for the year all disappeared. And they were saying, well, you can still do them and you can still do the work, but you'll have to do it from home and you'll have to send us a home recording. So for that sort of thing, particularly if I don't need audio, if I don't need video and I just need audio, I'll record on my mic into my little audio interface and straight onto GarageBand on the Mac, which comes with all Macs. I'm sure there's other software out there that you can record on, and then I just send that file. I listen to whatever guide track I've been taken through GarageBand as well, record onto that, and then send that file as an AIFF file, I think, which is a CD quality file, and that goes off to somebody clever like Chris. But they're probably, rather than sat in a home studio, they're sat in a recording studio, and they've got the real deal sort of mixing desk and what have you, or some very, very powerful software, and that all gets mixed like that. Now, I have recorded a couple of the MWO videos like that and sent Chris the audio separately to the video. And that means obviously either you can use the video on your computer and record into software. That might be good for, I think Mal was mentioning recording on the Mac. So if you could get it into GarageBand, get your audio into there, and you could probably send Chris two separate files, a video file and an audio file. And on the video file, Chris could mute any audio if it did spill over onto that, and just take the sort of higher quality audio file. Now, I did a couple like that, but it felt a bit of a faff really to do that separate thing. I've also done a professional recording where I've recorded the audio all in the way I've described. I've sent all that off, and then we had to provide video as well. But the video, and Adam was involved in this project as well, we all had to wear dinner suits. So I thought it was almost a day's worth of recording. I thought, well, I don't want to sit in my dinner suit recording at home all day. So I recorded the audio only and then put on my dinner suit, which I'm pleased to say still fitted after several months of lockdown. And I mimed to my own audio for the video. So that could be an option as well if you want to send a sort of separate audio to video file. However, for what we're doing here, for the kind of home recording thing, when I'm doing the MWO recordings, if I play as well as conduct, I don't tend to bother with that audio interface. Sometimes I don't use the computer at all. And a lot of the time I'm squeezing these in between teaching and between lessons. So if I've been teaching a clarinet lesson online, I've been using my iPad. What I'll tend to do is I'll listen to the guide track on YouTube on a device, perhaps even through my phone, headphones from my phone, and then I'll just record directly on the video function of my phone. And like I said before, I'd be careful about where I place the phone or the iPad. I try not to have it right on top of me, and then you just get the raw audio of what's in the room, and actually the quality isn't bad at all from an iPad or an iPhone, and it's quick and it's easy, and you've done it, and you've sent the stuff over. So I've recorded both on my iPad as a video and audio all together, on my mobile phone as a video and all together, on my computer as a video and audio all together, and occasionally separate audio and video, which is a little bit more involved. But I think if you're just testing the water with this kind of thing, you can get really good results with a smartphone or an iPad, and you certainly don't need to be running out and buying audio interfaces and studio quality microphones and things like that for this recording process. The important thing is that you've got something to listen to the YouTube backing track, the guide track, click track, however you want to describe it, so you can hear that in headphones. And then you've got something to record yourself on, an iPad, a phone, something like that, and that would do the job. That would be fine. Now, as I've described various ways of myself recording things, and I've sent all these kind of things to Chris, have you noticed any particular difference in quality or any preference to the way I've sent you things and in the way I've described there, Chris?
I mean, if I played something side by side, if you sent me a file from your microphone through an audio interface and then a file with just your iPhone microphone, then I'm sure I would be able to tell the difference. But from just listening to it, and especially considering it's going into a big mix with 30, 40, maybe 50 or 60 different audio tracks, you really can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Because it's just any great quality from your condenser microphone within the audio interface where you've twiddled with the features will just get lost in the multitude of the orchestra in the audio mix.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry, go on. Sorry, I interrupted.
So unless, I mean, again, this comes back to it is supposed to be a homemade feel to it. I'm not discounting people who do use proper microphones. You can record however you feel comfortable, but you don't have to worry if your video is a little bit grainy because you have a 5-year-old iPhone, or your video is really sharp because you've got the latest smartphone. We do what we can, and everything will go into the mix, and I'll do my best to make everybody look and sound as good as I can. Make them sound.
I think we mustn't forget when we're doing this as our band, when we play live, we have that safety in numbers thing, don't we? There's lots of us there, we're all involved. And when you're recording at home, you tend to think, well, you sort of get a bit blinkered and insular, really, because you're only thinking mainly about your part. You're only recording your part. You could only hear your sort of part on the video, so you get very self-conscious about that. And what you need to remember is that once it goes in, Chris mixes it together just like a Tuesday night rehearsal, and we do get that safety in numbers thing going on. Now, we'll talk about how Chris edits it and puts it together and sort of comes up with the finished product in a moment. But I just want to touch on the sort of process of recording. I've noticed it's come up in the chat. You know, what do you do with our mistakes? And a few people have asked me that. You know, we tend to put a bit of a pressure on ourselves when we're recording, or we suffer from a little bit of red light syndrome. You know, we hit record and suddenly we get terribly self-conscious and worried. And if you're not used to working in a recording environment, that can be quite stressful. And in actual fact, working in a recording environment should feel less stressful than playing live. Because if you make a mistake, you can just do it again. And you can do it as many times as you want until you get it right. That's how it should feel. But it doesn't somehow, does it? Because you make a mistake and then you feel frustrated. And you feel, oh, goodness, you know, I really want to try and get this right. And oh, I've made another mistake now. And you get yourself kind of wound up. So there's a couple of things to think about here, really. If you're recording in a professional capacity, yes, it absolutely has to be note perfect. The articulation has to be perfect. It has to, you know, all the dynamics have to be there. The recording will not lie. It gives you a very accurate, sometimes painfully true, you know, record of what you're playing like. So if you're recording for a professional thing, yeah, it's got to be absolutely spot on. The question is, does it need to be absolutely spot on and note perfect for a McGull Wind Orchestra virtual performance? Because if we were playing live, what I would say to you is, if there's a bit of this you can't play or a bit of it that keeps going wrong, leave that bar out and just carry on to the next bar, obviously in time, you know, but don't worry about the bits you can't play. If you can't play all those semi-quavers, just play the first and third of them and play quavers. So the same rules or the same suggestions apply for when we're doing our virtual performances as they do for when we're playing live. If you're playing through a piece of music, you might have downloaded the music that we've sent out. You've listened to the backing track either on YouTube, or as Gav's pointed out there, we're doing an MP3 version as well, if you find that more secure. You'll be listening to that and you've got to put your part into it. It's got to mix in with all the other parts that are going. Now, we've got many, many fine players in the band who will be able to play everything absolutely spot on. But the nature of our band is that we've also got people who aren't quite as experienced. And in the live setting, I'm sure they don't worry about not playing a couple of notes here or there, okay, or missing out a tricky phrase. I don't see any problem with taking the same approach for the virtual performances. Okay, so if you think, well, we've got a deadline of this approach, every time I play this bar, it goes wrong, you could leave it out. You could leave the mistake in, and Chris would probably pick up on that. And he's got a couple of things he can do, which I'm sure he'll talk about in a moment. So, Chris, from an editing it together point of view, if somebody sent in a recording that wasn't absolutely perfect, or maybe had a few less notes than were actually on the page, or maybe even had a 4-bar section which they left out because they just ain't going to get it right in time to get the video to you, would that be a problem, or would you be able to work with that?
It's not going to be any problem whatsoever, and I can work with whatever people send me, because people have in the past sent me multiple files, for example, even for some of the carols that we did in the earlier non-Christmas music. There have been occasions where people said, I got the first first half of the piece perfect, it was great, but I struggled at this section, it always threw me. So I've recorded them in 2 separate halves, or somebody will miss out the difficult section, and it's okay. I will not name and shame anybody. I'll just make a note of it, and you'll owe me a pint later. But yeah, there's no. I will not criticise anybody if all you can do is, and this is the example I know that Phil always uses. You know, when Kev Spofforth joined the band, he loved playing Mary Poppins because that had the most 3 notes that he could play in it. So do your best, and don't worry if you do make a mistake. As I find, you sort of start playing and you make a mistake in the first couple of bars and you want to start again, then if whatever you feel comfortable with, sending me files, recording yourself. But if, for example, you play an F sharp instead of an F natural, don't worry about it. If the rest of the recording was great, then don't worry about that F sharp instead of F natural, because I can auto-tune it to be the right note. And if I'm doing my job correctly, I'll listen to it and go, oh, that doesn't sound right, and I'll find it. So there is things I can do in the edit to make the audio line up. So occasionally there'll be there was somebody, can't remember what piece it was, but they got a bar ahead, but what they played was great, and in time with the beat, it was just a bar ahead. So I could easily just move that section to the right a bit to put it into time. So it's okay if you do make a mistake, because if I notice it, I can cut it out. Or if let's say you play a dotted minim instead of a semi-breve, I can then extend the note a bit. So there are things I can do in the edit to improve the audio quality and remove any mistakes that might be there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realise how much work goes into the production of this. Once all the recordings are in, the mixing, the mastering, the editing, as you've discussed there, is quite a large amount of work. And then once Chris has done that, he sends the first draft around the committee for comments. So often it's good to get a fresh pair of ears. It's like putting a different conductor on the podium, and somebody else listening from the front of the band. How does that sound? How does the balance sound? Do we need to boost the bottom end of the band, or is it too toppy, or is there not enough mid frequencies coming through? Because we're having to balance and blend the band a lot through the production of the virtual performance rather than through the live, which is why in the last couple of virtual rehearsals we've had, I've talked a lot about trying to capture the dynamics and the expression of the music within your part as you're recording it, not leave it too much to Chris to try and alter that. We try and capture as much of our human sort of playing in it as we can.
Just on that note, I've noticed that I think it was Mal made the comment, and I know Jeff has this as well. Sometimes the settings on your smartphone will automatically adjust the audio. So even though you could be playing the best dynamics in the world, it will just be a constant audio at the same volume, because your mic is there going, oh, I can hear something, better boost up the gain because it's a bit quiet. Oh, it's gone too loud, better put it down a bit. So again, do play the dynamics as well. But if the device is auto correcting itself to what it thinks it should be, again, I can tweak with the settings with the audio to make the dynamics appear.
Yeah, great. That's good. That's helpful, isn't it? Because we do, if we are recording on things like that, it can sort of compress the sound, as you say. And I've had a bit of feedback and talked to a few people, and they say I haven't taken part in a virtual recording yet because I'm a little bit concerned that I can't play it. I can't get through the whole thing without making a mistake, and I'm worried that I'm not good enough to do that, and that makes me feel really sad because the whole the whole sort of ethos of Muggle Wind Orchestra is that everybody can take part, regardless of age, ability, no audition, no fee. We want to involve everybody. So whatever you can deliver and send over to us, we can use and we can make part of, and that it needs to have the same sort of feel as just when we play live. Now, I'm not saying don't try your best, and I'm not saying send in an absolute load of rubbish, but get in what you can get in, just like you would do in a normal concert. And don't think that anybody is going to be listening to your part individually and sort of picking it out and going, oh gosh, listen to that, it's on record now. They couldn't play that bit, could they? Because it'll all get sorted out in the final mix. And also, if you find that doing the whole thing in one, and Chris touched on this before, if you find that doing the whole piece in one chunk is hard work, and maybe not quite got the stamina for that, or you haven't quite, you find the concentration starts to go and mistakes slip in at that point, break the piece up into two or three, and find a rehearsal mark that you can link up with the guide track. So, right, my first video is going to go from the beginning up to bar 64, and I'll stop there. And then, another separate video file, right, here's the middle chunk, okay, and then the third one is the next one. I think I've actually sent Chris a large file where perhaps I might have played all three clarinet parts, and I've just gone, right, here's clarinet one, play that, blah, blah, blah. And I go, right, here's clarinet two, and just kept the file running again. Chris can pull that apart and do whatever he needs to do with it, but there's no reason why you can't do that with on one piece. I mean, do bear in mind that Chris is one person, and if everybody who takes part sends their takes in 8 chunks, he's going to have an awful lot of editing to do. But if that helps you and that allows you to access what we're putting on here and be involved in it, do it like that. Okay. I also
go back to a previous point about being able to play what you can. Go back to our very first performance of You'll Never Walk Alone, that Jeff's daughter Eva, she only played 4 bars. She sat on her dad's lap, she blew the tenor horn, Jeff did the fingering, and she played just 4 bars, and she was included in the that very first performance. And then here we are 10 months later, and she's able to play through on cornet or horn, she's moved on to the horn, through an entire piece, a simplified, missing out a few bars here and there, but she can gone from just doing 4 bars to doing the entire piece. So it is possible. So it is okay to play what you can.
Yeah, that's great. And we've just got in the chat there, does Chris need detailed info on what is on each chunk, or can he work it out for himself? I would suggest if you just gave a heads up on what bar number you're starting at, and then Chris will be able to drag it in line. Would that be the case, Chris?
Yes, if you're able to change the file name to, even if it's just file 1, file 2, file 3, some people add in, let's say, Liberty Bell bars 1 to 100, Liberty Bell bars 100 to the end. Then, or even if you just add in the description when you send an email to me, just to say, 1 file is this chunk, the second file is this chunk, third file is that chunk. Because when I do the initial process of the videos, you'll be lining up all the files, and as long as I know where each file starts and stops, I can then put them in the right place on the timeline.
Yeah, it's been very useful, I think, just to have a chat about this, and it's good that, as Chris and I have been chatting away, there's been people bringing up things on the chat and helping each other out, which is really nice to see. It's really in the sort of community spirit of the band. I'd just like to close this evening with a thought on how we use recording in our own sort of everyday practice sessions. When we are playing live, and I use this term a lot. When we're playing live, I use this term a lot. We have to practice performing. So whenever I play, whether I'm demonstrating to a student, whether I'm doing a recording session for MWO or anybody else, whether I'm doing an actual concert or whether I'm practicing myself, I always play in the way I would do as if I was playing a live performance, as if I was playing to an audience. And then when I do play live, it feels no different to me. Okay, so it feels no different to me to record because I don't play in a different way to record, to playing live, to demonstrating for a student, to whatever I'm doing, because we must always practice performing. So even in rehearsals, we want to play as if it's a gig. Okay, so when you're practicing at home, try and have that in mind. Try and think, well, I'm playing as if it's a performance. And although there'll be maybe parts of a piece of music that you need to take out and do the wood shedding on, and maybe you need to employ various practice techniques on a certain phrase. Okay, when we're playing the whole piece through, try and play it through as if you're performing it, recording it, playing it live. If you do make a mistake, try not to let that disrupt the flow. Try and keep it going, keep the music having its direction and its fluency and its momentum. I've made a career out of covering up my mistakes really well, and I often talk to people about, I think, in over 30 years of performing, and some fairly high profile concerts, I can think of only 3 times of performance, live performance, where I've not thought I've not made any mistakes here. I can think of probably 2 concerts in my final recital at university where I absolutely didn't make a mistake. But everything else, and I'm usually doing 2 or 3 concerts a week, would have tiny little things in. You might play a little tiny wrong note, or the tuning might be a little bit off, or you might make a small rhythmic mistake. But if it doesn't disrupt that flow, that fluency, you just keep going and it's fine. And the audience don't notice. When you're being recorded, it becomes a bit more noticeable somehow, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
you don't have that vibe of live performance there, and suddenly the spotlight is shone, and it highlights problems. But as we've discussed this evening, don't worry too much about them unless it's a really glaringly obvious one where you go, actually, I need to do that again. Send it in and we'll be able to work with that. When you're practicing, it's well worth practicing recording yourself. Set whatever you're going to set up to record on your phone or whatever, and build in recording into your own practice, because then you get used to putting the phone on, letting record, and playing. I don't know what instrument that is. You can tell how long it is since I've been in a band. Let's do a flute. You practice recording your instrument. So then when it comes to the day, you've been practicing for a couple of weeks, it comes to the day of recording, it doesn't feel strange then to record it. And often I encourage students to use these kind of recordings to monitor progress. So if you are playing, say it was Liberty Bell for this most recent recording, if you're playing that every day up until the day you want to record it and send it to Chris to mix in, why not at the end of each little practice session that you're doing, make a recording of it? And then you'll end up with 7 recordings of Liberty Bell. You might not want to send any of those in, but it would be interesting, wouldn't it, to listen to recording number 1 and then compare it all the way through to recording number 7. And we would hope that the practice you're doing, if you're doing effective practice, the recording number 7 will sound a lot better than recording number 1. And hey, maybe one of those recordings you could then send to Chris, and you haven't had the sort of pressure of today is the recording day. You know, maybe it's already in the bag. Often the best recording I do is the first one, you know, and then I think I could probably get it better than that. And I'm not somehow not concentrating enough on it and lay back, and it's not quite as good. So, you know, if you do multiple takes, it's not always the last one that's the best one. You know, if you're doing them in one chunk, but build recording into your own practice. And all you need to do is listen to it yourself. You don't need to share it with anybody else. And you can then use it to monitor your own playing. Perhaps you'll get a recording out of it you can send in. And if you don't, well, at least you've got used to the process and used to listening to yourself back. When you do listen to yourself back, follow your music along and see if what you hear on your recording lines up with what you think the music does as well. And you'll be amazed, because when you're actually in the act of playing, you tend to kind of forget to listen to yourself a little bit. So then you're not actually playing your instrument, you're listening back to what you have played, you're looking at the score, your part, you can see if that lines up and see if it works. And it might just highlight a few little mistakes, or things you're doing differently to the music that you don't realize when you're practicing. It is a great practice tool, to record your practice like that. And I would absolutely encourage all of you to do it, whether we're doing it because of virtual performances or not. But because of the virtual stuff, a lot of us have got the gear to hand, and it's kind of set up and it's by the music stand, etc., etc. So give it a go. I'm just catching up on a couple of the questions that have come in here. Presume you could just send in audio if you wanted. I've had a discussion with this with another band, completely different band. So as they're saying, most people have sent video and audio, but we'd like videos. I think I think the thing is with the virtual performances, and because there's quite a lot of them about, and the way that sort of social media works these days, I don't really think an audio recording is quite enough. I think, we certainly need to see people playing. Now, if one or two people just sent in an audio file, that's not a problem. If all 80 of us send in just audio files, we just come up with a piece of music. And I think people like the visual side of things. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yes, I think the visual side of seeing the people play, and not just from an audience watching it, but from us as the musicians and members of the orchestra, just seeing fellow members of the band that, oh, it's nice to see Phil is still playing away, and it's nice to see Adam and Sarah or Tessa, whoever it may be. It gives that sense of the community spirit of the band. One instance where an audio file on its own is not that it's not acceptable to only have an audio file, but one instance where it is more acceptable is Adam and Sarah, because they're very good. I praise them a lot, because Sarah can play virtually every woodwind instrument known to mankind.
She had a very good teacher.
Yeah, that she will video record her playing clarinet once, but send through 3 audio recordings, one for clarinet 1, one for number 2, and a third for clarinet 3. Because, no offence to Sarah, once you've seen Sarah play the clarinet once, it doesn't matter if it's from clarinet 1 or clarinet 3 in the actual video itself, unless she does something really interesting, like changes the room that she's playing in, changes her jumper for every single instrument. Then recording 3 clarinets, sending 3 videos is a waste of videos, because chances are I'd just use 1 video, but I would use all 3 audio. So if you feel up to it and you want to record clarinet 3 because you're a clarinet 3, but then you go, I'll give clarinet 2 a go, and you send through clarinet 2, then that's fine. I'm quite happy just to have an audio for clarinet 2, and I'll add it into the mix. Or
yeah, I think that's a really good point, Chris. And I know that many of our members play multiple instruments, and why not use the time to send in multiple files. I think it's great. You know, if you play a second instrument and you want to have a go, you know, a clarinet player, but you want to have a go at an alto sax part, you've been playing alto sax in lockdown, for instance. That's, you know, do it. If you're usually a second flute player, but you fancy a crack at the first flute, all the music is up there on the drive. Have a go, see, and if you come up with something that you feel you want to send in, do. And if you don't, well, it doesn't matter. You've had another go at a different part. You know, it's just a good opportunity to try things out, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think from the video point of view as well, we've got to remember that music is an entertainment form. It's an art form, but it's also entertainment. And an audience doesn't just listen with their ears, they listen with their eyes as well. And if it looks good on the screen and it sounds good as well, that's great. You know, if it looks terrible but sounds great, it kind of takes the edge off it. If it looks great but sounds terrible, that's even worse, isn't it? So it's about the whole mix, just like a live performances. You know, you have to think about that kind of stagecraft as well as the musicality of the whole thing. So I hope that's answered some questions and sort of given you a few ideas and a few tips and hints. Like I say, this is being recorded, so this chat with Chris will go onto YouTube, which includes his information video, and it'll all get emailed around the band as well. But if you haven't recorded yet, I hope this has encouraged you to give it a go. If you are recording and you know, you sometimes feel a bit worried about it, you can clearly see you don't need to be. And if you'd like to have a go at playing more parts and send them in, do it. You know, have as much fun with it as you can. Record during your practice. Use it as a way to monitor your own playing, and yeah, use it as a good musical outlet, because at the moment this is the best we can do. And whilst we're waiting for things to come back to normal, and whilst we're waiting for the restrictions to be lifted, this is the best way for us to come together and make music. And the virtual performances that we've done to date have been absolutely splendid, and there'll be something we'll be using to promote the band for years and years to come. So this is a good use of our time while we can, a great use of the resources we've got, and a great way to keep us all engaged. So I look forward to seeing the finished article of Liberty Bell. Obviously, I don't see the individual videos, only Chris sees that. Once again, a huge thanks to Chris for all his work on virtual performances, and thanks for chatting to me tonight, Chris. For now, stay safe, look after each other, keep well, keep practicing, keep recording, and we'll see you again very soon.